Welcome to the This Week I'm Into podcast. I'm your co-host, Pete Tyler, and this week I'm into true crime. Later on the episode, we're going to have my friend Kiley Stephen from Physical Therapy School join us to talk about true crime. But right now, I'm here with my friend and co-host, Paul Imbragulio. Paul, how are you doing?
Thanks for giving me that extra long pause to try to come up with something, Hans. I am doing really well. Don't look in my closet behind me.
Are you just dying to be here?
Oh, wow.
That's really what I thought you were going to say.
That's good.
Every week now, I'm trying to predict like what your intro is going to be.
No, that's good.
Sometimes
you should write
I'm
it down
right,
beforehand, but that's
not.
good. That's good.
Yeah.
I want you to know that I give it all of about 10 seconds of thought.
Okay, yeah, on the spot. You know, sometimes it's good to have a deadline anyway. Well, Paul, talk about true crime this week. Very interesting topic. I think this is one where I could pretty fairly say this is a square zero for me.
Yeah, I'm probably square like 0.5.
Ooh, okay.
And you're gonna think after I tell you the only true crime reference that I know might actually put me in the negative.
Okay, well, I'm excited to hear. But before we get there, can I set a scene for you?
Is it a scary scene? You know I'm afraid of horror movies.
It's a little on the spooky side, but I think you can do it.
All right, what's the scene?
All right, so you know CSI, right? The TV show.
Which one?
Have you heard of it at
Miami?
least?
Regular
Sure.
one.
Any of them.
Any of them. I'm an NCIS guy.
Oh my gosh, wait, is there more CSI beyond just normal CSI?
NCIS.
Holy cow.
Naval
Okay.
Criminal Investigative Service.
Dude, we have so much to dive into. Oh my gosh. Anyway, imagine we're in CSI, right? Or just a normal crime scene. But I think it's more fun to imagine we're in CSI. All right. There's a dead body on the ground. It's outlined in chalk. There's a lot of police around. They're securing the perimeter, making sure the crime scene's all safe. Yellow tape says caution, do not cross. Detective ducks beneath the tape. He says, "Chief, what do we got?" In that scene, what character are you? Tag yourself.
That's a good question. Wow. I feel like whatever I pick is going to sound like sketchy because I'll be honest, the first thing that I thought of, which isn't me, was like the person who's like taking photos everywhere of like crime scene evidence.
Oh,
why would I want that?
Okay.
But I don't think that would be me. I think I would be the police officer that lifts the caution tape.
For the detective.
Yeah, my dad, when I was a kid, said that I would make a really good crossing guard. So I think that would fit my skill set.
Okay, it's a small, albeit critical role.
Non-speaking role. I
mean, how's the detective going to get through without you? So
there's a reason that we do a non-video podcast, and I need to be on screen as little as possible.
Oh, come on, man.
Yeah, they have hair and makeup, right?
Paul, you want to know where I thought you were going to go? I had two guesses of what I thought you were going to say.
Was one of them the dead body?
I thought you were going to either say the dead body. That was one of them.
It's a good one. I didn't think of that until you just asked.
I thought you were going to say the dead body outlined in chalk on the ground. Or I thought you were going to say the murderer hanging around the corner, hidden away. Yeah. Ducked away.
We did a murder mystery party, Hans, and we like created like a fake body with like tape and stuff on the floor. And my character, this was like a pre-one, like made out of like a box or something. Like you get characters and stuff assigned to you. My character was essentially Mario. Like it was like a murder at like a pizza store or something, like an Italian restaurant. And my whole character, all of his like motivations were like clearly a spoof of Mario. Like I was a plumber. I really liked mushroom pizza. I like had like a girl or something that I was like losing, like Princess Peach or something equivalent. I don't know. And I feel like I was the only character that was like a complete joke.
Were you all? Oh, okay. You were the only one that was like...
Yeah. I was like the only one that was just like a total...
I'm Mario, and everyone else is like, okay, well, I'm Fred, the server. Yeah, pasta. Pasta o plomo. Mario, pasta o plomo.
Me at what?
Oh my god. Not El Chapo, the other guy.
Pablo Escobar.
Thank you. He used to say plata o plomo.
Oh, I
which
thought you
was
said
like
pasta.
I did. But plata o
Oh,
plomo was like silver or lead, which was like take a bribe or we'll kill you, basically. So
that's
as
really,
your
really,
Mario
that's
was
really funny. No, that's really funny. That's really funny. I didn't get it. I didn't get it until we
uh
had this whole explanation. Thank you.
you know what they say about explaining a joke, Paul? It's like dissecting a frog. You learn a lot about the frog, but you kill it in the process, so
Oh my God.
we're on fire today.
Um, what was the point? No, anyways, yeah. I'm just the dude lifting the tape. Going back to square one
Okay, yeah,
to your
sure.
scene. What's my role?
Yeah, you're the tape lifter, which is critical. I did say it was critical, so
Thank you. Thank
yeah.
you.
I'm not overlooking you here.
Okay. So now we're supposed to talk about the people who talk about those crime scenes.
Yes, that is the position we are in. So, Paul, do you want to give your best shot at explaining what true crime means?
Yeah. I'm going to say this as somebody who's never watched or listened or read any true crime thing ever. So what I think it is some sort of, let's say, podcast, right? Like a true crime podcast where
Sure.
they're either looking into a unsolved or a solved like mystery or crime. And I would think that a lot of times, they talk about like suspects and their motives. And like sometimes if it's like unsolved, they might talk about like where it currently is and like try to give some theories, just like a general topic talking about crimes and their statuses.
Amazingly well put.
That's
Yep.
it, right?
Yep. And
I think they're normally kind of spooky, right?
they're usually kind of spooky and they're real stories. That's where the true part comes from. So, I think that was really well put. So, Paul, you mentioned earlier that you have a point 0.5 experience with watching true crime or something. What does that
Yeah.
mean?
So you've seen High School Musical, right?
I've seen one of them, I think.
Yeah. Okay. And then you know of High School Musical, the series,
Yes.
right? It's a TV show about the high school that High School Musical is set in that does High School Musical the play in it. So I feel like by watching Only Murders in the Building, that's my relation to true crime. It's a TV show about
Okay.
people who are true crime podcast lovers doing a fake true crime podcast. So that's why I was saying it might actually be worse than if I had known anything about true crime.
Wait, this is getting so meta because so we are a podcast whose episode is focused on true crime, talking about a TV series that is about podcasters who are true crime podcasters.
Exactly.
My head hurts.
All right, and with that, we'll bring on our next guest after the break.
Okay, I have a couple things to say about true crime.
But that's it. That's my
yeah.
knowledge of true crime, and I do really like that show. So I could actually like true crime.
Okay. I'm with you. And actually, when I looked up true crime, that show did come up. So I think you're actually in the fair. I'll give you 0.5 for sure.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'm in the positive.
I won't put you negative. I'm with you. I haven't really experienced much true crime. I guess it's not a genre that I usually turn to. And it's not, I guess, that I don't want to. It's just there's never been one that's really spoken to me. But the one thing I will say is not all true crime is murders. And one that I thought was kind of interesting was I think there's something coming out about Theranos and Elizabeth Holmes. You know that
really?
whole scandal? Yeah.
Yeah, wasn't there a TV show about that? Sorry, that's the only kind of media that I consume.
Yes. Okay. So when I was looking up stuff, I was like, okay, that's the TV show I actually would be interested in watching. I think I'm a little shy about the murder specific ones. Maybe a little.
So there's a podcast about Theranos now too, like a true crime podcast of Theranos,
which I think is interesting. All right, it's kind of a new take on the true crime. I think because it's not about serial killers, basically, even though serial killers can be interesting, but there you go. So I think I would maybe watch that one if I had to choose one.
Like a corporate scam.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Ooh, there's nothing that gets me going like white collar crime, baby.
Oh my god.
Love white collar crime.
So juicy. The intrigue.
The other thing's like the only thing I really know true crime is all the memes of like, like a girl with her like cup of cocoa like in a cozy blanket next to the fire and like looks all cozy, and then the TV is speaking and it's like, and the killer kept multiple frozen heads in the freezer. Yeah.
I guess. Dude, do you think true crime has become popular in like the last recent years? I feel like I hadn't heard
absolutely.
about it. And I think it was probably popular maybe like 2017 or something. I feel like there was a huge boost in popularity. I don't know if it's still really popular, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah.
But I know that there was a point there where like everybody was listening to true crime podcasts.
Yes. I think that goes all the way back to like Serial. You probably heard of that one, right? Serial, the podcast. Okay, I think
I'm not familiar. I'm really out of touch.
No worries. That was like, I think pretty much the OG true crime podcast, and I think it really garnered a lot of interest because also true crime kind of lends itself well to a podcast format. So that all being said, I can't wait to bring our guest on because she'll have a much more knowledgeable and in-depth take than us two blabbering idiots.
You think?
The one thing I wanted to talk about true crime especially was this part that I'm not particularly fond of is I don't like how some true crime kind of like immortalizes bad people and like kind of in a way makes them like their stories kind of like sexy, I guess.
Oh, so it's more than just like the serial killers on the news getting popular. You're saying like they kind of play them up to almost be like an anti-hero.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird sometimes, I feel. I remember when I think Dahmer came out, which was a Netflix series, right? About Jeffrey Dahmer, who's like horrific person, right? But like I remember after that series came out, like everything about it, they made his story like kind of glorified it, and then weird part of it was the casting. The guy was actually kind of hot, so I mean,
how are they going to sell it to the girl with her cozy hot chalky?
Yeah, so I don't know who the actor is, but I do remember everyone saying like he was a hot actor and like that. Like I don't know, it's weird that they made Dahmer. I mean, maybe I don't want to get far into it. I'm already like stumbling and being careful with my words here, but like I think it's weird that they made him sexy and like people said he was sexy and that they like immortalized that story a little bit in a almost positive way, which is, I don't know, again, gives me the ick. So anyway, that's all I really had to say, and that's not like really the most intelligent take on it either, but here I am.
I would say it's a fair reading into the genre. I'm hoping that people aren't getting obsessed with serial killers because of podcasts, but there honestly have been weirder things. So
yeah, I think it's just like a lot of people have this like kind of almost morbid fascination with it, which makes sense. I mean, I like horror movies. Like it's the same kind of thing. Like it's like, people like the creepy for some reason. So here we are.
Yeah. Nobody's watching it as like a PSA to walking down dark alleys.
Yeah. You could take it as a cautionary tale. I feel like hopefully that actually is how a lot of these are taken. So the other thing I wanted to say was O.J. Simpson has a book. It's called I Did It. But in really, really small font, you see the letter if you look at the cover. So it's If I Did It.
Wait, do you know why it's like that, Hans?
Well, I assume because allegedly he couldn't legally say, like, I did it, and then...
No.
Okay.
Wait, this is a really cool fact. Wait, this is a really cool fact.
Okay.
So...
Fun facts with Paul.
I might get this slightly wrong, but I learned this in some, like, intro law class in college.
Mm-hmm.
And it was something to do with, like, civil litigation and, like, what you're allowed to seize, right? I don't know all the specifics. But basically, O.J. Simpson was sued civilly for killing that person, right?
Yes.
So in criminal court, he's found not guilty.
Mm-hmm.
But civilly, because there's, like, a lower burden of proof to win civilly, he lost.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think he was his technical residence was in Florida. Yeah, so at some point he had declared bankruptcy after that trial, and in Florida, like, bankruptcy laws, you're not allowed to, like, seize certain items. Things like your home and your car, right? Like, they could make you probably pay, like, a monetary value. I don't want to get into specifics, but, like, they couldn't take away your home or something. So there wasn't a lot of money for the the people to collect on.
Oh, okay.
But one thing that is not protected are books, or like the publishing rights to the books. So he had written this book called If I Did It. And in his version, right, it's like If I Did It, all the same text, right? Which is kind of like probably like a screw you, right,
Mm-hmm.
to the people involved. But because of the civil litigation, he lost ownership of that book, and so they reprinted it with that cover.
Oh, okay. I see. So they purposely made it to look like it said "I did it," and then
Exactly. Yeah. And so
okay,
they were making the money off of the book sales.
I see. Oh,
And that's
okay.
like for the people who like beat him in court. Yeah.
That's really interesting, Paul. Okay.
Yeah.
Uh, holy cow, you brought it today, man.
I know. Thanks, random teacher in college.
Hey,
I
at the
thought that was
very
such a cool story. I'm
yeah, and
glad it
at the
came up
very
again.
beginning of this episode, you said I don't know much about true crime, but here you
That's
are.
one step. I went from 0.5 to 1.
I think that's the best fun fact. I got a couple more fun facts I can rattle off to you, and then you want to throw it over to our guest after that?
You can do the throw over, but yeah.
Sure.
I feel like we have this kind of like intro content strategy that we've worked up over the episodes, Hans.
Paul, I was just trying to.
Some of our listeners might remember when I used to do the intro and the toss over, but we've decided that Hans is a lot cooler than me, and we don't do that anymore. Anyways, get to the fun facts.
Too meta, man.
Fun facts
Too
with
meta.
Hans. Fun facts with Hans. Fun facts with Hans. I forgot the song.
Thank you. That's all I really wanted. Okay, got some fun facts for you. Okay, Paul, do you know the infamous gangster Al Capone?
I've heard of him.
Okay, yeah, Chicago mafia boss, or mobster, I should say, and he was transported to Alcatraz, right? Did prison time at Alcatraz. We should have, which is another whole thing. But anyway, Al Capone. Did you know? Even though he was pretty much accused of murdering tons of people, he was not convicted on murder. He was eventually arrested on tax evasion.
White collar crimes. White collar crimes.
Yes.
Hans loves white collar crimes.
Ooh, nothing
Isn't
gets
that pretty
better
common
than...
for mafia people? I feel like that's always like they get caught for something tax related.
Yeah, no, I think that's... I don't know why, because maybe it's way hard to, like, prove, I don't know, murder, but it's way easier to prove, like, hey, you didn't pay your taxes. Anyway, the world is run by the IRS, I think, when you think about it.
I think they're abolishing that. Sorry, not a political podcast.
Not a political podcast. Okay, Sherlock Holmes. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the creator of Sherlock Holmes, is often credited for popularizing several forensic techniques that are still used in crime solving today. So that little piece of fiction, life or art imitates life.
Like which ones?
Asking the great questions, Paul. I couldn't tell you.
What?
I don't know. Maybe like fingerprinting. That's a complete guess. I need to come in with
Shallow
fun
facts with Hans.
Yeah, completely shallow.
Hans isn't used to me giving follow-up questions.
Yeah, can't you just say, "Oh, cool," and just move on?
Oh, cool,
dude?
man. That's awesome.
All right, one more for you. You brought the most fun fact today, anyway. Despite its high security, and by the way, this is coming directly from applevalleyfarmgeorgia.com/blogs. So it's
How do you find these
fun
things?
facts.
Like, where are you finding these websites?
Anyway, applevalleyfarmga.com/blogs says, despite its high security, Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary had several escape attempts. The most famous one in 1962 involved 3 inmates who were never found, leading to speculation about whether they survived the treacherous waters of San Francisco Bay or escaped to California and made it homebound and just never revealed their identity.
They definitely have that information on a lot of other websites, Hans.
You mean I don't have to go to applevalleyfarmga.com/blogs?
Sorry, what was the website?
This random website is getting more plugs from us than anyone else. So I think with that fact, like we could make a new true crime podcast about these 3 escaped convicts, whether they're at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean Or are they, living it up in, I don't know, Montana under different aliases?
Anyone living it up in Montana?
I don't know. So, anyway, that's all I had to say. Paul, you have any true crime resources?
Only Murders in the Building, baby. It's a good show.
Yeah, Only Murders in the Building. I'll say Serial was like the OG true crime podcast. So, I mean, I guess give them a shout,
Hey, man. Tricks is for kids.
Different kind of Serial, brother. But I like your creativity. All right, I think that's about as good as time as any to throw it over to our guest. So we'll have Kiley Stephen on after the break. Welcome back, everyone. Joining us now, we have Kiley Stephen here to talk about true crime. Kiley, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Pete and Paul. I'm Kiley. I met Pete in PT school, so that is how we have kindled this friendship. And today I'm going to be talking about true crime. I know it's an interesting one, but it's a topic that I find fascinating and not too creepy at all.
Thank you for the caveat there, Kiley, because wow, when you listen to the first half of this podcast, you might find that me and Paul find it kind of creepy.
It's different for everybody.
It is. And we also learned that not every true crime is a creepy crime. Like, there's also, like, some, white collar crime out there that's right up my alley.
Favorite.
Yeah. But anyway, Kiley, can you tell us a little bit about how did you originally get into true crime?
Yeah. So in high school, there was a show, I think it was on ABC. It's called Castle. Sometimes they play reruns of it.
With Nathan Fillion?
Yes. So, so I used to watch Castle with my mom all the time. And I think it's kind of like a murder mystery show. It's kind of like a Criminal Minds vibe, which I also love and watch. So I think watching TV shows like that is what really sparked my interest in true crime, because I thought like the solving a true crime case is almost like a puzzle. There's so many different pieces that you need to put together in order to figure out what really happened in a situation. I love puzzles. So then it also made me love the puzzle piece of true crime. That's kind of how I got into it. And I have been listening to podcasts, watching shows, following stories ever since then.
Okay. Thank you for the analogy, because I was wondering why you find it interesting. But if it's a puzzle, all right. I know you're the puzzle person, so.
I am.
Yeah. So, Kiley, what kind of aspects of the true crime make it most interesting to you? And by that, I mean, like, I know you said it's a puzzle, but, like, is it kind of a morbid curiosity? Like, is it the killer? Is it the mystery behind it? Is it the way that a podcast presents the story? Like, what makes you fascinated with a good true crime story?
I think the ones that are the most complicated to solve are probably the most fascinating. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like, obviously, the morbid part of it all is truly sad. Like, I do still find a hard time listening to podcasts about, like, children who end up, being within these true crime stories. And obviously, that's hard to listen to. I don't like that morbid part. But there's almost a part of me that's like, what could have been going through the killer's mind that made them do this? And I think that is what kind of sparks a lot of people's curiosity too. Like, how could somebody have that kind of mind in order to commit such unspeakable acts? And I think that's something about true crime that a lot of people are interested in. Like, so many people take psychology or study the human brain. Like, everybody's got a brain. Everybody's brain functions differently. So there's always some kind of curiosity about, what could that person have been thinking in the moment? Why does this person think that way? There's people, so the show Criminal Minds kind of looks into the behavioral analysis unit. And that is a real unit within the FBI. Obviously, it's just a little different in the show, very dramatized. And they study people's behaviors, and then they can figure out, based on behaviors, actions that have been performed, the way somebody was killed, the location, things like that. They can gather a profile about what a killer is like. what their race may be, what their age may be, what their like preferences may be, what job do they have. Like, it's so interesting how behaviors can help target a killer and then hopefully give these families that have lost somebody that they love some kind of justice. So I think those are a lot of aspects that I've listed there that make me really intrigued about finding out about true crime.
So I have no background in true crime at all. Can you kind of like walk me through the premise of true crime? Because you were talking about ones where you're like analyzing a killer's mind or talking about like a crime that has happened. Are these all related to or mostly related to crimes that have been committed and solved, and it's like a story of, you know, the process of solving it? Or are some of them unsolved and it's just like people's theories into, you know, the behavior of the criminal or like where they might strike next?
Yeah. Some of them are definitely unsolved. I listened to a podcast called Crime Junkie, hosted by Ashley Flowers, Britt Praywat. There's my little plug for them. A lot of the cases that they do are solved and unsolved, because the unsolved ones, they still want to bring justice to these families. And then if their listeners have any idea, if they live in the area where something happened, if they could have any kind of clue or insight into the case that could help those unsolved cases become solved, that's kind of the nature of true crime, I feel. It's like, yes, there's solved cases and there's justice, but also there's unsolved cases. And if anybody has any kind of information, there's a community of true crime listeners that are willing to bring that forth.
That's really interesting. Have you ever heard of a case where a listener contributed to the solving of a true crime, like, I don't know, podcast, TV show, anything?
I have not heard of one specifically, but I know that there's been more developments because of listeners, or like a case that nobody would have ever heard of was brought forward to these podcasters, and then it was obviously broadcasted out to a lot more people. So even though we may not be able to solve, we can at least get the word out about this stuff.
That's really interesting. It's like you're kind of like crowdsourcing info, which I think that's a really interesting aspect of true crime podcasting then, because like you're getting the word out, like maybe there will be developments. I think that's pretty cool. I want to ask about a specific story. Kiley, can you name a specific story that has really like gotten you interested in true crime, or has, you know, specifically interested you?
Yes. There's a lot of interesting stories I've watched. I'll kind of list off the ones that I've like watched, like documentaries, listened to podcasts on, and then I'll kind of dive a little bit deeper into the one that still gets me to this day. Obviously, you have the O.J. Simpson case. You've got Casey Anthony, Lacey Peterson. The one in particular that has really drawn me is JonBenet Ramsey. Have either of you heard that name be thrown around at all?
I don't think so.
That's new to me.
New to me? Okay. So, and this is a case of a child, but it is unsolved still. And I think that's why, and people are still talking about it. Like, there was literally just a documentary put out on Netflix in December of JonBenet's dad talking about the case itself. But JonBenet Ramsey, 6-year-old little pageant girl from Georgia, lived in Denver, Colorado. And in the middle of the night, she was kidnapped. Her parents woke up at about 5 a.m. Her mom found a ransom note on the counter demanding that the dad give X amount of money in order for JonBenet to be returned safely. They called the police right away. They had police coming and searching the house, but at the same time, they had a ton of friends and family and pastors there too. So like contamination of a crime scene 101 right there. And then a little later in the day, a detective was like, hey, why don't you guys just search the house up and down one more time again? Just in case JonBenet was in the house. They found her dead in the basement. And then the media had started saying that the family was involved and kind of spun this tale of like, if she wasn't found until later, were they hiding her downstairs? This ransom note doesn't really make sense. The media just started construing it to be like the family had to have committed this murder. But the family has come out so many times and say it was not them, it was an intruder. So there's one side that really is convinced that the family did it. and that's kind of like law enforcement. There's another side that like a lot of viewers, a lot of listeners, a lot of people engaged in the story that believe an intruder did it. And it's still unsolved to this day, which is why the dad is speaking out now. I think the brother has come to speak out about this too. The mom unfortunately passed away, so she never got to find out really what happened to JonBenet. But it's a case that continues to intrigue everybody, and it still intrigues me. Like, I listened to a 3-hour podcast about it last week because there was new information coming in that hasn't been released before.
Wow. Holy cow. Okay, so this is developing right now.
Yeah, and I think it's because technology has advanced so much. I think a lot of DNA testing has become really fine-tuned to pinpoint an exact person. But if that person isn't in like the national, I don't even know what, national registry of like somebody who's been in prison before, they might, exactly, they might not show, like their DNA might not show up, and then you can't match that person. But I think DNA is getting to the point where it could even describe like what ethnicity the person may be, what color their hair and their eyes could be. Like, I think with continuing...
so you might even be able to figure them out without knowing exactly who they are. Oh, that's cool.
So I think with continuing evidence with that, and then like recounting events that happened, people that were around, all that kind of stuff can hopefully bring light to this case and hopefully one day find her killer. But there's so many podcasts about it. There's so many documentaries about it. It's still talked to during this day. I think it came out in December because it was like the day after Christmas that it happened. So it's always kind of like brought up again around December. But that's probably one of the first cases that really sparked my intrigue, because I'm like, how aren't people figuring this out? This is so sad. The family is pleading that it's not them, but there's people that believe it's them. So that it's just...
So how long ago did this happen?
This was in 1996.
19?
Oh,
yeah.
Whoa. So
and they're still finding stuff now. So
and they're still finding stuff now. Absolutely.
Whoa.
30 years later? That's insane.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about a cold case.
There's so many cold cases out there that get reopened up because of some random item that pops up, and then they can DNA test it, and you could find God knows what from that. But, yeah.
Holy cow. Was there DNA found on the scene? Just curious. Or is it like it's way too old now that it's not even feasible?
Yeah, there was DNA found on the scene. It's tough because when they found JonBenet, her dad had found her, carried her up the stairs, and was like, my daughter, my daughter. The police, in their mind, are like, don't touch her. Don't contaminate the crime scene. But he's like, that's my daughter. How am I not going to pick her up and bring her upstairs and be like, somebody help her? I see. It's like there's some of that DNA, but then there was some DNA, like she was wearing these like long johns, like tights kind of type thing, and there's DNA all over that has not been identified yet. So that's like, it wasn't the moms, wasn't the dads, wasn't the brothers, none of the family friends. Like, so there's an unknown source of DNA there.
Okay.
So that makes me think, like in my mind, I'm like, oh, that's an intruder. That's one reason why it leads me to an intruder and not the family. So, there was DNA found in the case.
Do you ever have differing opinions from what the podcasters or a TV show are trying to lead you to? Because I imagine that a lot of these ones kind of have an opinion or an agenda that they're trying to get across. But have you like formulated your own theories?
Yeah, I've started to formulate my own. I think that I do often agree with the podcasters and like with the logical evidence that they find. I'm like, how could it not be that? But there's always two sides to the story. Like, I have disagreed on some cases before, and they've been like small cases that no case is small, but like not as much media attention. So like some of the cases I've listened to on Crime Junkie, there's been ones where I'm like, I don't really know about that. It's a bit of a stretch for me, but I could also be wrong.
I guess you don't know until the police figure it out.
Exactly.
And even then, it might not even be right, you know?
Yeah.
Like, did the police get it right, you know?
Yep. You never know.
I have a small anecdote that maybe, and I'm going to butcher this story, so, but maybe this will enlighten someone. But at one point, there was what was thought to be a serial murderer, and I can't speak to specifics, unfortunately, but apparently, so like whoever the detective was at the scene or the evidence collector, whoever it was, would swab for DNA evidence. And every single time they swabbed and would send the DNA out for analysis, it would come back as the same person. Eventually, they DNA matched that all those swabs to like it was like an elderly grandma, and they were like kind of getting ready to convict her because her DNA was all over murders like all over the city. And then they found out, well, no, actually, this grandma works at the cotton swab factory, so her DNA was just on the cotton swabs because she makes cotton swabs.
Oh my
that's
goodness.
That's why she was at the murderer at every single scene. So I only offer that to say, like, I think that John Bonet's story you just said is just murky enough to, like, it's really inconclusive, right? Like, yeah, maybe there was outside DNA, but, like, I don't know, someone might work at the Long John factory, or someone might have, I don't know, maybe picked it up on the playground, something like that. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud, like, it's just murky enough, right? Which I think that makes that story is definitely very interesting. I hope more developments come. But what is the most recent like say on where that is going?
I think a lot of people right now are saying that there was an intruder, just based on some like other things that happened. Like there was a suitcase off to the side in the basement that had her clothing fibers on that as well. So did somebody try and put her in the suitcase to try and bring her out of the house? There's just like I think a lot of people are leaning more towards the intruder side of things because parents have done so many interviews, polygraph tests, which those can or cannot be reliable. So I'm not saying that's 100% certain. I think that a lot of people have just played out the logistics of it all. And there's just like no way that it could be the parents.
Okay. Well, that's certainly a case that's been in the running for a long time. So I hope there's some closure there.
Yeah. And I won't give out too many details if people want to listen to it. But you tell me your thoughts then if you think if it was the parents or if it was an intruder. I think intruder, but it's always up to the imagination.
Yeah, I don't know. You bring up a lot of good questions, so I don't know. Should me and Paul just become full-time true crime podcasters now?
That could be a new spin-off.
Yeah.
All right, Kiley, you're our new host, all right? You're our new co-host. So
bring me back.
Welcome aboard.
It takes a lot of research into seeing the whole scope of what goes into a true crime show or podcast. Like, there are so many different news sources that you need to find. You could interview people that are directly related to the case, like a relative or a friend. Going back to watch old news interviews, like, I think to put together a true crime anything, show, podcast, whatever, there's a lot of research that needs to be put into it because you want to say the right things. You want to get the facts correct so that when you present it to an audience, there's no gaps, there's no lies, anything like that. So I do know that it takes a good amount of time in order to put all of that together.
Yeah. It's very interesting because, like, does the podcasters, are they, like, doing a better job than, like, I don't know, the detectives at the station? Like, where are they getting their info? How are they piecing it together any better than, I don't know, the local cops are? So I just think right now, but
no, it's a good way to think. I know that some law enforcement officers have been on podcasts to talk about, what was going on at that time. Was the department super busy and it ended up just being pushed to the side because there was something bigger going on? That has happened quite a bit, and that's why some cases haven't gotten as much media attention. Or, like, is there somebody that had a biased opinion? Did somebody know a family member? And there's kind of like a steering away from looking at this suspect. People can hide stuff pretty easily, and it's quite scary. So.
That's spooky. Yeah, man, this is spooky to me.
Can we take it non-spooky? Can I ask about white-collar crime now?
Sure, if I can answer about it.
Okay, well,
I'm sending the IRS on you, Hans. I know you're up to something. What are you writing off from this podcast?
Paul doesn't know it, but we actually make millions on every episode. I just embezzle it, so.
Oh, sweet Jesus.
Just kidding, IRS. Just kidding. We don't make money. Kylie, all I wanted to ask was like, I know true crime through my research doesn't necessarily have to be about serial killers or like really famous murders, even though a lot of it is. Have you ever listened to an episode of a podcast or any kind of story that is a white collar crime that's not about murder? And does that ever compare to how interesting the more like violent stuff is?
No, I have not listened to any white collar crime.
It just reminded me, Hans, maybe we watched this together. Wasn't there some Netflix documentary about the Mormon church?
Oh, yeah, there was.
Like
Yes.
all of their history. I don't think I got through the first episode. It wasn't all that interesting. Sorry, white collar crimes. Anyways, there must be some that are not related to murder. But
yes, yeah. There's definitely crimes out there that are not related to murder.
But you just don't listen to those ones.
Exactly. There's an audience out there for that. I am not that audience. I mainly listen to murder-based podcasts.
Okay.
That's fine. Do you think you have a reason of why you find those more interesting than non-murder ones? You don't have to get into your full psych. This isn't a therapy session if you don't want it to be.
Not a therapy session. No, I think that's what draws me more. I have no intent. I will preface this to the crowd. I have no intention of ever committing such acts. That is not my goal. That is not why I listen to this. I don't want anybody to think that.
Oh, thank God.
I don't want anybody to think about that. But it's just like, I don't know. This might be a silly comparison, but like some guys get so into sports and know so many random statistics. I feel like my like get into kind of thing is just true crime. I just get really intrigued by it. I don't get intrigued by the murder itself, but I get intrigued about the psychology behind it and the puzzle pieces that solve a case.
It's okay. No, it makes so much sense. I definitely think it's like one of those story building like topics, and I could see how you can get sucked into it, just like with any other story.
Yeah, the story is really interesting to follow along. You can piece together what you thought went on in your head. And then if you're listening with other people, like I've definitely done long car rides with friends, family members. I've thrown on like a crime podcast and then we'll kind of discuss together like, oh my gosh, what do you think happened? And that's kind of a fun thing to do with friends too.
Sorry, to kind of change the topic a little bit. You were mentioning how there's a lot of different mediums for getting a true crime story out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Podcast, TV shows. I'm sure there's something else, a third one. Do you think that you see differences in how the information is presented? Obviously, with the visual, you can show facts and stuff or like interviews. Do you have a preference for one or the other, or are they just kind of different?
I guess it just depends. Like if I'm in the car, obviously I cannot watch a TV show kind of thing. I think that TV shows can provide like a live depiction maybe of what could have happened, of like they hire some random people to kind of enact what may have happened. But that also, it's like a maybe. So like a podcast could also be the same kind of thing for me. I think I like listening to podcasts a little bit more than watching the TV shows because I can listen, like I can obviously do that more often than I can watch a TV show. But I find the podcasts to have a lot more information than a TV show does. I think the TV show does a lot more acting, which is great. That's what they're for. And some people like that medium. I like the podcast medium better.
That makes sense. It's also, TV shows have to get ratings, right? So sometimes I feel like the acting / drama is way more important. But like, I mean, podcasts, like the established ones at least, definitely have to get ratings too. But like, they have a little more freedom with the way they're able to tell a story, I feel. So I'm completely with you on that one, Kylie.
Yeah.
But talking about like TV shows, there's one I wanted to talk about specifically. I brought this up to Paul. But do you remember when Dahmer came out? I think it's a Netflix show, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever watch that one?
Yes, I did.
Okay. I remember when that one came out and everyone was saying Dahmer was really hot. But I say that a little bit in jest, but like it does bring up a question of like, how do you feel about like some of these stories almost like glorifying the killers themselves, you know? It kind of like memorializes the killers in a lot of ways, which I feel like is a little contrary to the goal of the media, but I don't know. Have you ever noticed any aspects of that, and like how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I didn't hear that about Dahmer specifically, so interesting to the people that said that. But I have heard people say there's also a Ted Bundy documentary show, and people are like, "Oh, he was hot," and I'm like, "Oh my God, how can you think about this when there's so much more? And there's a totally different reason why the show was made." Mm. So I do, like, people that say that, I'm like, oh, why was that brought to anybody's attention? Because now that's going to be the focus of people on whatever, Twitter, Instagram, any conversation. Like, that would be the focus once it's released, rather than telling the story and getting the word out there about what happened. So I do think sometimes, like, if you were to listen to a podcast, that takes that glorification out of it, because then there's not a face that you can attach it to. Obviously, there's the real face of the person that committed these crimes if you go and look them up online. But yeah, that has been something I've seen on quite a few cases. And I'm like, how could you say that about somebody that's done something so terrible?
Yeah, like, that's not the takeaway here, right?
No, not at all.
Like, would you feel that these stories would still hold, though, if they didn't have a name attached to it? Like, could you just replace their name with, anonymous, and then do you think it would still hold weight?
Oh, that's a really good question.
I'm just thinking out loud here.
Yeah,
I'm new to true crime now, so...
Yeah, I don't know.
Probably a fake name would do the same thing, right? I imagine that the name is more just something to attach it yourself, like your imagination to.
Yeah, I do think so. I think these, and like, the second that you hear the names of these people too, at least like for people with it that like know of the case, kind of within the true crime realm, like if I say the word Ted Bundy, like, people may know what I'm talking about right away, and then can instantly engage in that conversation without having to like reintroduce all of the facts of the case, which obviously I'm so more than happy to do with anybody that wants to learn about it. But it's like a little community just kind of knows right off the bat, like, with the name, what happened, what people's first opinions are.
Kylie, if I can, I want to switch the gears real quick.
Switch the gears. Just not white collar. I still don't know about white collar.
That's okay. I wanted to switch the gears to, you said you listen to a lot of podcasts and stuff of true crime. What's like a very underrated or lesser known true crime story that you feel people should get into?
Can I look on my Spotify really quick, just so I make sure I get names correct and everything?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going on here just because Crime Junkie, they had this whole month of where, I think it was a month, they spoke about different cases that really weren't getting much media attention, had no progress in the case whatsoever. But they were like, I'm going to make an episode about it just in case anybody knows absolutely anything. So some of those I really do like to hear about. And on Crime Junkie, they have a mix of serial killer and just like one-time killers if you don't want to hear about the crazies.
Multiple murders.
Yeah, multiple murders at once. I'm ready. Okay, so all that scrolling, I didn't want to give one specific name because I feel like there's a lot of names that I could throw out there and I want you to listen to. But if you do look on Crime Junkie podcast, they're on Spotify. I also think they're on Apple Podcasts or whatever that. I only use Spotify, so I literally don't know much else. But if you go on any kind of audio app, go to Crime Junkie and listen to some of the missing episodes. It'll say missing, solved, murdered, serial killer. It'll have a ton of different titles in all caps. But if you listen to the missing ones, those are a lot of the cases that are still yet to be solved and that you could bring more attention to just by listening to it. It's like, if you guys listen to it, it's 2 more people that know about a case that somebody out there is still trying to fight for and solve. So I would recommend the missing episodes.
Do you know where they get these topics from? Do people like submit like, this is my cold case?
Yes, a lot of people will send like literally DMs through like Instagram or something and be like, this, my friend passed away and, we've been trying to figure out, who her killer was. Would you mind shedding light on her? And then they give like him or her. I shouldn't just say her. Would you mind shedding light on this person? Send the name, and then the Crime Junkies do their thing and do their research. So a lot of it can be like, intrigue of cases that they've heard about, but it could also be from fans sending in requests for this happened in my hometown. Could you do an episode on it? Which
That's
is
very
pretty
interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting how a fan base can have that kind of impact on a cold
I
case.
wonder how many of those they get. Probably a lot.
Probably a lot. I can imagine people just flooding the DMs with.
Yeah, how do you pick the one that you think is the most authentic?
Yeah, that's
Or
an
most
interesting point.
worthy of looking into? Because you can't can't spend the time to look into all of them. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or easiest to make into a podcast, but that's a moral question right there. That's an ethical dilemma. So.
Yeah, it's like, there's only a little bit of evidence on this case. Could I make 30 minutes of an episode based on it? But I also don't want it to come down just to that. Like, it's a big question.
How long are these episodes? Are they like multi-episode format, or is it like the whole thing is in one? I'm sure there's multiple kinds, but
yeah, like it literally just depends, I think, on the podcast that you listen to. The one I listen to specifically, the episodes range anywhere from like 30 minutes to an hour. But big ones that I have listened to have been like one I listened to, the John Benet Ramsey one, was 3 hours long. So it's a case just full of so many details that they're like, I can't just spend a little bit of time on it, and I don't want to lose track by doing multiple parts. So they just filmed it all in one shoot. But there are some that have like part 1, part 2, or if there's updates on a case, they'll do like update and then the name of the case. So sometimes there are breakthroughs that they let the listeners know about too.
That's kind of exciting if update pops up in the feed, and like if you're really into a story, like maybe you'll get some closure on that story.
Yeah, like did they bring somebody in for questioning?
Yeah.
Is there a prime suspect? Like all of those things that I have had a few of those pop up ever since listening, and I'm like, oh, go, yes.
It is so interesting to me that these podcasters are like so linked with the story themselves, as in like how do they get the information like out there faster than anyone else, it seems. So I don't know, maybe they have ins with the police station.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that when you first start off the podcast, it's hard to get those ins and the true details. But maybe as you grow, you get more connections, you meet more people in the true crime field probably, and they might have some connections or different ideas, different sources of information, all that stuff.
Yeah, and at some point, if people are really trying to solve these cases, you probably get people like the police being like, yeah, we'll help you out if you can.
Exactly. Like
info.
If you're putting the info out there about it, like, okay, you provide all of this information, maybe we should open the case back up and maybe it won't be cold anymore. There's always a little bit of hope, but you don't want to hold on to hope too much. It's hard.
Right. There's a balance there, right?
Yeah.
Kylie, do you think you'd make a good detective, investigator, or profiler? You've listened to a lot of true crime.
I have literally watched Criminal Minds 3 times, and in my head, I'm like, I could totally be a profiler.
Tag yourself. Are you a detective there? Like,
could I do it? Maybe. I think it.
You're in deep thought. I see.
I am in deep thought. I think it would be really interesting, but then you have to think about. I just listen to these podcasts and I listen to these stories, so it's not like it weighs on me all that much. If it were my job, and this is something I focused on every single day, and I had to potentially see horrific stuff and talk about horrific stuff every single day, that might really weigh on me. So I think in my mind, in my problem-solving skills, I could do it. Emotionally, I don't know.
What have you learned from all these true crime podcasts? Are there any profiling things that you've picked up, or trends you've seen that you notice in your everyday life?
Always be aware of your surroundings, because you never
True. It's a cautionary tale, right?
People say it so much, but watching these shows and hearing these stories, it is so true. Always be aware of where you're going, who is surrounding you, because you never know who could be watching, anything like that. I don't know if there's specific behavioral things that I've picked up on in the show, because all of a sudden somebody spits something crazy out of their mouth and they're like, oh my gosh, you're so right. And I'm like, well, how did you just come to that conclusion? Because that was so quick. But obviously it's TV. So that kind of plays into the draw of the show. But I would just say, like, there could always be somebody watching and you never know. So that's probably what I've picked up on, because people can be sly, and it's a little weird that people can be sly.
I don't know if everybody has the same experience, but when I was a kid, I would always walk around my neighborhood assuming that a sniper had a red dot on me at all times for no reason. Like, I didn't think anyone was going to kill me, but I just like assumed that there was like somebody watching me as I was like walking to the bus stop in the morning. That's like a very random thing. Am I the only, has anyone else ever thought something like that?
Paul, I personally have not had that experience.
Me neither.
Pete,
sorry,
have
Paul.
you?
Okay,
But
what
that
about
could-
the one when you're in the car and like the guy's like running alongside you?
What's that?
You're like a kid, you're looking out the window and you're just like pretending like a little dude's like running along the terrain beside you? No? Okay, never mind. Let's move on.
It's okay. It is okay. Paul.
I just think that sometimes
It
there's
is
these
okay.
shared experiences that like nobody talks about. Nah,
Yeah.
that's cool.
I feel like if I'm looking into a dark forest, that there's people looking back, you know? Have you ever had that experience?
Ooh.
Like the little eyes.
Yeah.
You have a feeling you're being watched.
Oh, yeah, I think that's kind of what the sniper thing is about. But maybe
Yeah,
that's a
I think
little too
I think it's
specific.
the same concept but different ways of it.
Manifestations, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
manifestations.
My parents let me play shooting video games a little too young.
That could be
Yeah,
what.
and I read Little Red Riding Hood too young, so I'm scared of the forest now.
Oh my goodness. It's just, you hear about a lot of these kids cases, and it's like, as a kid, you're so like, you just want to, I don't know. I always just wanted to go outside and play. So then when I'm with my friends, I don't really care about what's going on around me. I'm with my friends. I'm having fun. So it's just like you were thinking about the sniper as a kid. I wasn't thinking about the sniper.
Thank God you're still here, Paul. Like,
I know.
maybe you did save yourself from the sniper.
Well, and then every once in a while, I do like a little matrix dodge, like just in case the timing worked
just
out.
in case at that exact moment a bullet came and you.
And I went, whoosh.
Woo!
That's funny. All right, Kylie. Obviously, this podcast is about getting into a new hobby, a new passion every week. So, what's the elevator pitch for why should we pick up true crime?
Oh, why should we pick up true crime? Well, if you are like me and like putting the pieces of a puzzle together, I think that true crime could be a really interesting way to start because it helps you formulate your own opinions, hear a lot of facts about a case, and then make a decision about what you think may be going on. Some of these cases are gruesome, and it is not for everybody to listen to. So I will preface that. But it's a case that makes you want to listen. There are a lot of cases that make you want to listen and be like, oh, I'm so glad that justice was brought to that family. That is something that no matter how morbid the story may be, if it's a solved case, it makes me feel really happy for the family involved that may have lost their loved one. And you can see like the countless hours, the amount of resources that people have spread out in order to make this happen. And I think that even just by like us listening to a case like this, it can spread even more awareness. Now, I particularly don't research a lot more cases and like look into it and find facts of my own, or there haven't been many of the cases that I've listened to that are in the Chicagoland area. But I think if there were, I would look into it a little bit more. So anybody around the country can kind of like, oh, that's my hometown. Maybe I'll look it up and maybe I'll find new facts that nobody's heard of.
I think I'd be happy that there were none in my hometown.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I'm like, you'd be happy, yes. But then at the same time, if there was something tragic happening and it hasn't been solved, like, what if there is something that you could do to contribute? Even like a small idea, small piece of evidence, literally anything that could contribute to helping other families that haven't had the happiness of having a case come to full closure. What if I could contribute to that? Or what if I could talk about this story to other people and maybe open up their minds too? So I know that was a long spiel, but I think that true crime is a really niche community that a lot of people actually do come together with and could just open up your eyes into what's going on in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. There's almost there's definitely a community aspect to it that I like that you brought up. Kylie, do you have any plugs, either personal pieces of media you want to give a shout out to? I know you want to mention Crime Junkies again,
Crime
probably.
Junkies! they are my queens. They lay out everything so beautifully. I think I've gotten quite a few of my friends, family members, and boyfriend to listen to Crime Junkie. And they have all thought it was fascinating as well. And I think if you give an episode a try, you might actually find it I don't want to say enjoyable because it's not the right word, but really interesting to listen to.
Awesome. Kiley, thanks so much for coming on the pod.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm so excited that we could finally talk about this. And I know you haven't had anybody talk about true crime yet. So if you need anything else about it, I will answer your questions.
We'll definitely ask for updates if you get any. We definitely want those.
Yeah, I can give updates. Absolutely. And if I start listening to white collar crime, I'll let you know.
Please do. I feel like that's the next step. Maybe that's the intermediary step for me, at least, with true crime. I love
have you listened to a white collar crime episode first, then a true crime, then a true crime episode?
Hans, I'm going to get you hooked on the TV show White Collar.
What's White Collar about?
The TV show?
Yeah, it's about white collar crime.
Yeah, it's about a guy. It's like, imagine like a white collar crime guy got caught and now he's an informant, or he's like a consultant to the FBI on other white collar crimes.
Ooh.
It's a show all about white collar crimes.
I'm intrigued now.
And the guy is pretty cute. And he's not necessarily a serial killer, so you can think that.
Okay, good. So no moral dilemma for me then. Okay, total tangent. Kiley, thank you for coming on the pod.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the This Week I'm Into podcast, and a huge thank you to Kiley Stephen for sharing her passion on true crime. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for future topics, please reach out at thisweekiminto@gmail.com. And give us a follow on Instagram at thisweekiminto. Please rate us 5 stars and share this episode with a friend. We're doing our best to grow the podcast, and your help really goes a long way. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you on the next one.
Okay, Hans, quick question. I saw this expense report sent to our P.O. box. Why did we just buy a speedboat?
Oh, yeah, that's for marketing.
Marketing?
Yeah, expanding our brand presence, like getting our name out there. Podcasts thrive on visibility, Paul.
I know what marketing is, but this says here the boat is named Offshore Account.
Okay, that's just a coincidence.
Okay, I mean, it is a funny boat name, but what about this $8,000 charge? It says it goes to Vinny the disappearing guy.
Oh, Vinny, yeah, he's a consultant.
For what exactly?
Podcast things.
Hans.
Okay, fine. Vinny helps things, go away.
Go away how exactly?
Just don't get caught up in the details, alright? The important thing is our business is thriving.
Okay, so thriving enough to withdraw $15,000 cash from the bank account?
Business expense.
Okay, but what business expense is requiring you to take untraceable cash?
Ooh, tolls.
Hans, I've never seen you in New Jersey. You are not driving on toll roads.
You never know when one might pop up, You always should be prepared.
Okay, how about this one? A wire transfer, $20K. The Grand Cayman Shadow Fund?
Okay, investment.
Investment in what?
Like future opportunities, Paul.
Hans, tell it to me straight. This podcast money, are you embezzling it?
Whoa. Okay, let's not jump to conclusions. I may have moved some money around. Maybe I strategically reallocated some funds. You
bought a speedboat.
Maybe I made some bold financial choices.
It's literally a crime.
Okay, Paul, hear me out. What if we turned it into content?
What do you mean?
Well, think about it. A real true crime podcast. But the crime is happening to us. It's immersive. It's edgy.
Hans, the crime is us. It's a felony.
Okay. Small legal hiccup, but with the right PR spin.
Dude, we are so screwed.
Well, you might be. I actually have a flight to the Bahamas in an hour, so...
Hans!
Love you, buddy. See you on the other side.